Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Now, some of you might be coming to this brand new, and some of you might have already been subscribers to the channel and saw the live stream I did, where pretty much as soon as I got this bad boy, I decided to kind of give you my initial thoughts. So, for those of you that might not be subscribed, definitely try it out if you're into watches like this. There you go. So anyways, guys, this is of course, a Seiko new for 2020 Prospex Alpinist. Some are calling it the Baby Alpinist. Now, a little bit about Seiko. They were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin, but now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to extremely high end. Now, this type of watch, I'd say we could call it an everyday watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for something that can be worn every day. Of course, you're really just going to want that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes. Now, this particular model, I think, really does that, especially considering that it is on the leather strap. Now, a little bit about the Alpinist line. It's really just an adventurer's watch extension of the original line dating all the way back to 1961. Basically, the Alpinist was kind of the first sports watch that Seiko had made. But this particular release goes back to the traditional non-internal compass bezel style. So you can see that although as of late, I'd say the Alpinist really picked up its following once they did have that internal rotating compass bezel. The original iteration did not have it. So it's nice that they kind of paid tribute, of course, to what made the watch so popular with this very traditional dial layout, but you know, a lot different. And then of course, sans that internal rotating bezel. So with all that said, guys, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, this is a looker, as you can see. And one thing I really want to make sure that I can get across is this dial and the tones and the warmth that actually come out of this. It is really quite spectacular. Now, Seiko's really known for the special dials that it does, but it's mostly in kind of the dressy aspect, but it does also release great sports watches. And in this case, I think they really nailed the color play, the tone, the palettes. It's actually really, really nice. One thing to, you know, before anybody gets in here and says, hey, this doesn't match the lume on the hands, doesn't match the lume on the indices. Guys, those indices are printed and they're not lumed. The lume all matches. The lume is actually on the hands, but also on this outer chapter ring along the outside. So you can see that outer little train track there as it goes to every 5 minutes or every hour, depending on how you're reading it. Those are actually little white plops. Another thing that I thought was actually quite interesting about this is that it actually has blue lume. So this is a little bit of a different blend or mixture for Seiko's Lume. So I was pretty surprised, but this stuff is actually pretty potent, which I was also very pleasantly surprised by. So again, in 2020, Seiko is just doing a lot of special things. Now, this particular model, the nomenclature will be your SPB159. These go for an MSRP of $700. So of course, you can find them cheaper from different dealers. I got this from Carrot & Co. out in New York. So check them out. They've actually had these in stock and have been shipping them pretty much ahead of everybody. I think most other ADs are still waiting for you know, for inventory, including, you know, some of the Japanese ADs that I use from overseas to try to get stuff quicker. So, you know, obviously Carrot & Co. Have a great relationship with Seiko as far as supply goes. Check them out. They do have other models in stock, and of course, even outside of the Alpinist range, but within the Alpinist range, they do have some great models on hand, which is wonderful. So go ahead and check out the link below to get, you know, just to get there a little bit quicker while you're watching me ramble on about the attributes of this particular watch. Now, this is a 38 millimeter, which I think is a great size, especially for a watch with this type of layout, no bezel, whatever. You know, when I think of a diver, I think 40 is kind of the sweet spot. When I think about something that doesn't have a dive bezel, you know, that's pretty much all dial, I think, okay, 38, 38.5, 39. That's a bit of the sweet spot for me. I don't think it's undersized. It's definitely not oversized. It is really just kind of in that sweet spot, which I can appreciate. So 38 millimeter diameter, only a 12.9 millimeter thickness. And of course, this is a Seiko. So when we say thickness, that's just a number, because what Seiko does, look at all these contours here. Look at the shape, beautiful, luscious curves. We have a nice healthy natural slope that comes down on those lugs there. And you can see that the crystal actually has a very slight dome to it as well. So you are, some of that thickness is accounted for from that standpoint. It's not going to feel like something that's, this big clunky sports watch. It actually fits quite well. And for most of you who are used to the traditional Alpinist, you'll see this as just a thinner option. So that's good there. Lug to lug, this thing is actually quite compact. It's only 45.9 millimeters lug to lug. So this is going to fit on the majority of wrists, guys. This is really, really nice and compact. And again, a real part of Seiko's tradition of that, just class leading ergonomics and wearability, even at larger sizes. So when you have something like this at a more modest size, it just takes all those those attributes and really capitalizes on all the tricks that they learned from making a 44 or a 47 millimeter watch extremely wearable. When they put that same design ethos into something that's 38 millimeters, it just makes it infinitely more wearable as well. Now this is brushed and polished stainless steel. The majority of it is polished, as you can see. Really just the tops of the lugs have a nice brushing, which catch the light really, really well, and I like that. But pretty much, you have that polished bezel, you have the polished sides, and then of course the polished, nicely polished and contoured crown there, which is a screw down crown, which is great because as you can see, it offers you 20 bar of water resistance, or 200 meters. So that is really, really outstanding. The crystal actually has a clear AR coating, and of course you can see a little bit, you can catch a bit of a ghost of that AR here when I play with it against the studio lights. But the real sign is that as you look here, man, look, although there's some really crazy high beams essentially on in the studio, you can really feel like you can reach down into this dial, and it's really quite mesmerizing. And I like that it's a bit monochromatic, but because of the play in the gradation and the warmth coming off of those ivory markers there, it just has a way of balancing. There's just a nice touch, nice pop. Obviously there's a little pop of color there on the second's hand, and instead of making this just very drab and just pure black and white, having that gradation, having those tones and those little nuances of color play, for me, really make it look great, and it just gives it a little bit more of kind of this vintage stylized vibe, and I'm really digging that. And it even ties in it to, of course, the strap here, as you can see, with that kind of vintage style stitching there. This is probably the best Seiko strap I've ever experienced. I cannot explain to you how soft and supple the underside of this is and how well finished it is, and really it's just super soft. It's very nice. It doesn't need to be broken in. Typically when I get a strap, from Seiko or really anything OEM, I'll just do this and kind of break it in and get it going. But this thing just conformed to the wrist really well, and it really, for me, I don't think it even had a break-in period. But check out the edges here, really nicely finished, very, very supple, almost like a padded leather, but it's actually just a nice soft premium piece of leather there. So very, very nice. I mean, even Seiko looks like they're pretty proud of it. Seiko calf leather, so nice from that standpoint. And I gotta say, very, very well worth the price of entry there. Nice case back, as you can see, display case back. You can see the 6R35 movement, which is lovely. It has a 70-hour power reserve versus the 50-hour power reserve on the 6R15. That is due to that Sprawn mainspring, which is also anti-magnetic, which is great. And it has 24 joules versus the typical 23 joules of the 6R15. So pretty much everything you liked about the 6R, except you have an extended power reserve and an extra joule. So generally it's going to, wherever the joule wasn't before and where they added it, is just a better point of friction protection. So you can't be too mad at that. The case back, again, not super exciting. It is a display case back that just has some light etching, and then you can see the crystal itself does have the Seiko Prospex branding on it. It doesn't look bad, but I wouldn't call it exactly a selling point by any means. The indices, as you can see, are printed. There is that nice textured black gray degraded kind of dial, which I think looks absolutely outstanding and really plays well here, as you know, in this color option, but as well as across the line with the blue dial and the green dial options, the green and gilt. So to specify, they do have one that does really tie back to that SARB 017 kind of look and aesthetic, but of course with a nice twist. Now the date is at 3 o'clock. It does have white font over a black disc, which I think looks outstanding, and they do have it nicely framed, so it is a little bit of a departure from what you'll see with today's other Prospex Alpinists that do have the Cyclops and have the contrasting date with basically a white disc with black font. So I think this is really a nice side where it's gonna feel a little bit more balanced and less obtrusive, but at the same time, if you need to know where the date is, you can find it. So really well integrated from that standpoint, and I dig that. Now, those hands, of course, are those signature cathedral hands, and they are nicely brushed and loomed as well. And then you do have the loomed hour pips on that outer track, which actually they do a nice job of kind of blending into the dial until you shut out the lights, which we will definitely get to. Now, the water resistance, again, 20 bar, 200 meters, that is outstanding, especially for something that you can really wear every day in any situation. So even if you're quite dressy at a formal, type of thing, the nice thing is, if it is one of those times when you get loose and decide to jump inside of a pool with a suit on or something like that, this is the type of watch that will totally survive that and actually will thrive in that situation. You do have 20mm lugs, and this strap has a nice deployant clasp, as you can see here, and it basically tapers from 20mm down to about 17.5, and then the buckle here is about an 18mm buckle. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on wrist and show you guys how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears absolutely outstanding. Doesn't look undersized, doesn't look oversized. Again, let me get a little bit more arm in the picture there. It just has a way, again, of pulling some of that Seiko magic out. You do get a great amount of wrist presence because of the dimensions of that dial, the ratios, dial to bezel to the case, but it's, again, ultimately, it's a smaller size with shorter lugs that wears really well. Even up close, guys, typically you're getting a lot of lens distortion. This doesn't feel oversized at all. Really quite handsome. I think the black on black stitching works. And then, of course, this deployant clasp. It's nothing crazy or anything special, but I will say it's pleasantly surprising how well it wears and really how useful it is. And then when you think about it, of course, it's a little bit different. And I guess many people would kind of think of this as in reverse, because when you have a traditional tang buckle, the buckle will be on from the 12 o'clock, and then the loose end will be there. But here it's a little backwards, and it's because it's imitating a clasp. Right? So when you're closing a metal bracelet, that's how it closes. So it's more intuitive, again, to a bracelet, because the deployant clasp there is what it's, that's really what it's mirroring. So just, for everybody that thinks that, hey, is Seiko putting these on backwards? No, they're not. It's purposeful. And there's a reason why Tudor does it as well. And that's pretty much it. So that extra tail, it's basically an opening, and it mirrors the way that a clasp typically will open. That's open there, close down, bam. But as you can see, guys, just like you'd expect from Seiko, look at the way that thing wears. That is outstanding. I know some of you are thinking, oh, it's a big chunky sports watch, but man, that wears really, really well. And then of course you have all those soft contours on there. It's nicely rounded, which, a big contrast to the Seiko Sharp Edge Presage that I reviewed recently. Here you have those beautiful round contours, which I think really lend to kind of that mixture of sporty and dressy aesthetic. Really nice. You can see it definitely hugs the wrist. And for those of you that didn't watch the live stream, I did compare this a little bit to the Seiko SARG, the SARG, essentially the SARG 009 and the SARG 11 or 011, because you know, it does have that kind of field watch, explorer kind of vibe. And it does something. It has that real cool, clean, classic adventure vibe, and I definitely really like that. But of course, with that 20 millimeter lug width, it's really, really great in terms of you know, being a bit of a strap monster. And my initial thought when I saw this was, man, this would look outstanding on a Tropic strap. And of course, Uncle Seiko, of all people, they actually make a really cool Tropic strap. So we'll use some, I'll save you guys the trouble of watching me put this on, but I haven't paired this yet, but I have a feeling that this is gonna look killer and really tie in with the Tropic design and that dial, which honestly, faded dials, some people even call them Tropic dials. So let's go ahead and get this swapped out, and actually even let's even get it on the wrist. Oh yeah, that is the stuff. Look at that. Look at the way the light catches the texturing, you know, that basket weave texture all over this really nicely done Uncle Seiko Tropic style strap. Of course, you do have the sign buckle and everything. Very simple. Very retro, of course, but it really, for me anyway, it gives this just a little bit more of a splash of the retro vibe versus the vintage vibe. And there's a little bit of a difference there. I feel like retro definitely is more kind of a fun thing. It adds a little bit more excitement. Vintage isn't always fun or exciting. Sometimes it's just very, very classic. So really nice. I haven't even tried it on the wrist, but man, let's see. This I'm blown away by how soft and supple this thing is. I haven't even worn it or broken it or anything. Okay, that's why you can see that I'm even having trouble getting the tongue tucked. Bam. Okay, check that out. Nice. What do you guys think? Are you guys fans of the original, which is quite nice, very supple? This isn't far from the throwaway leather strap that came with the SARB 017, but something about this, and of course, since it's not on a deployment strap, it can lay nice and flat. You know, whether I'm storing it or maybe dropping it in a couple of Instagram shots. I absolutely adore this look. Let me know what you guys think. Am I crazy, or are you guys on board with baby alpinist on Tropic strap? Man, that is absolutely killer. So with that said, let's actually get this off wrist, onto the table, get some low light transitions, some Lume shots, and closing thoughts. Okay guys, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, surprise, surprise, Lume Bright Glowing Blue. Now, I've heard about this. I know that sometimes my camera has played a little bit of tricks and made things look a little bit blue. Guys, this is straight up just a more blue Lume. Excuse me, a little hot. But man, it glows blue, and it glows really, really strong. So props to Seiko, again, for finding new and exciting ways to really surprise me as kind of a Seiko connoisseur. Now, one thing I do like to do here, instead of just doing a straight blacked out Lume shot, is I like to work in some low light transition, guys, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of the times you're going to be coming in and out of a building, maybe walking underneath an overhang or two, or maybe just coming in and out of your favorite vehicle. Now, as you can see, also with the transitional lighting, you can actually get an idea of what this is going to render and how legible it's going to be in mixed lighting. And I have to say, I can really still get great orientation on there. Although when it's completely blacked out, of course, you're not going to have that 12 o'clock orientation. Maybe it might have been nice for them to maybe add a double pip at 12, but you know, not a deal breaker by any means, especially considering none of the other similar alpinists do that. But if you guys look at the way the light plays with the textures on that dial, and I'm glad that I did this on that beautiful Tropic strap aftermarket option there, because the dial and the rubber, they catch and play with the light in a way that I think really, really sing together. So look at that dial or you can get really, really grainy and just it captures and soaks in the light. And now you're getting something with that strap that really can do something similar and kind of play off of each other. Look at how the lower strap is catching light in different angles than the upper strap. And another nice thing is you can typically see as the light glides over that brushing, how uniform that is, how nice, tight, and refined that finish is, of course. And then, you know, when it comes to maybe some harsher lighting with much higher, you know, contrast, you can see the little nicks and you know, little pieces of dust here and there, you know, kind of exposing. So this would also, if this was really, you know, low finish, you'd be able to also expose some of those imperfections. And you know, you can see these imperfections are pretty much things from wear, and that's what happens when you have a really nice polished steel, is that it's going to pick up little hairlines here and there. And you know, that type of wear typically gets washed out by the studio lights, but I did want to show you that there for any of you that were concerned, and also give you another look at that dial and the way that it absorbs the light and reflects and just plays. Look at that. That is absolutely killer. Really, really digging that. Look at that and how black that looks, right? Versus over here, and then you get that bright, bold, you know, gray burst. Oh man, that's a nice little transition there. From here down to here. You're mesmerized by the dial transition, but then look at the strap transition. It's also playing a little light game as well. So digging that, guys. I think these really play well together. Again, let me know what you think in the comments below in terms of this Seiko, or say Uncle Seiko Topic-style strap. I'm digging it. Now, closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, of course, sporty yet compact wear. So it's by no means this, you know, ultra thin dress watch, but it's not either, you know, it's not a Panerai, right? It's not this big bulbous bubbly tool watch. It's something in between, and I think it's a really great hybrid in terms of that. And then I think also that the high polished bezel and case sides and that crown really do a great job of giving it that vintage vibe, right? It can be a little bit dressy. You do have, of course, the Arabic numerals there, which also lead to a little bit more of a dressy look. Even the degrade on that gradation on the dial, also something that's typically very dressy, but the way it's executed is very, very sporty. Even just cathedral hands typically are associated with dressier dials, and here you have something that is innately sporty, but at the same time dressy, and just it sings versatility, guys. I'm really blown away by how versatile this is. I knew I was gonna like this watch, but the more time I spend with it, the more I can kind of appreciate what it does and how it's kind of a jack of all trades, especially in this particular color palette, because, you know, obviously black is always going to be black. As much as people joke, hey, gray is the new black, this is playing both sides, right? It's a black dial, it's a gray dial, it's doing it all. It's modern, it's clean, but it's also kind of vintageized and retro, right? With just a touch of that ivory kind of warmth that you get from a nice true tropic or patina dial. So I'm digging that. As far as model variations go, you also can get a blue dial on a blue leather strap, or a green and gilt model on a bracelet, which looks absolutely outstanding. Comparable models goes, guys, I'd say something, of course, like the Zen 556, which I think is also quite comparable to your traditional Alpinist, but here maybe even more comparable. And then you got newcomers to the game like the Boulder Venture or the Traska Summitier. You know, those definitely, or even, of course, I could compare this to your standard run-of-the-mill Alpinist, which have become, you know, quite popular these days. So it's no longer kind of this niche thing. I think they've really hit kind of the mainstream. Bottom line, guys, this new Alpinist is also a bit, again, of that SARG, right? It's the SARG 009 or 1.1. It kind of has that, it's a bit of a reimagining and a blending of that really very desirable and collectible piece mixed in with some of that wonderful Alpinist DNA. And then of course now you're getting that Alpinist water resistance, which is absolutely outstanding. So with all that said, again, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you hit like, actually, if you like the video, hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. And guys, comment, what do you think? Tropic straps? I'm not crazy about Tropic straps, but sometimes they just hit. And in this case, I think it does, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks, guys.